Seofon is a pretty interesting character in Granblue Fantasy Relink. He has probably more combo paths than any other character in the game with his basic attacks, and is capable of outputting some pretty impressive damage if you can take advantage of his avatar gauge. In many ways, I would say he plays pretty similarly to Catalina with more of a focus on offense than team utility, but the same focus on keeping your avatar out as much as possible and attacking as much as you can while it's out to get the most damage and benefit. The gauge management can be pretty fun, but can be a bit annoying when against very mobile bosses that are difficult to consistently attack, since you can lose damage from having a hard time getting many finishers off. As this is a Day 3 guide, I can't promise everything is 100% perfect, but I've learned everything I can about the character, so I hope it's sufficient to teach you how to play. So in this video, I'm going to discuss Seofon, talk about his strengths and weaknesses, and showcase how to use him in practical fight applications. If you enjoy guide content for Relink and other RPGs, please be sure to subscribe to the channel because it does really help me out so much, and I'll love you forever. Let's get into it. Let's start with the basics of his kit and explain the avatar gauge. So if you look at his first support skill, we have Star Sword Sovereign. This will allow him to summon an avatar with the Y button as long as you have any level of gauge. You can dismiss the avatar by pressing the Y button also if the avatar is already out. While the avatar is out, the gauge will continuously deplete unless you use a link attack, which will refill the gauge slightly. To fill the avatar gauge, you need to land combo finishers while the avatar is not active, or you can use the skill that instantly grants the entire meter. While the avatar is active, if you land combo finishers, you can raise his sword shine level, which is tied to a second skill, Spirit Swords. Using any damaging skill or combo finisher will fill this right side gauge and raise the sword shine level as long as the avatar is active, and the higher this level is, the more additional attacks your moves will do, which in turn means more damage. When this gauge is fully maxed out, you can do a big combo finisher with an avatar finisher that will instantly delete both gauges, meaning you need to build the gauge again to summon your avatar. Before talking more about this, let's talk a bit about his combo paths. Seofon has potentially more combo paths than any other character in the game, with 5 combo options listed on his page, but a few hidden combo routes as well. Combo A through D are pretty standard combos that involve using various levels of X and then Y twice afterwards, or light attacks into heavy attacks. Of these, Combo A, B, and C all seem to fill the avatar gauge about the same amount, and Combo B will fill it slightly more since the final light attack will fill it on this combo route. If the avatar is summoned, the progressive levels of combo routes will fill the avatar gauge slightly more for each combo, and also do more damage and have a stronger finisher. Now, the cool thing about Seofon is you can kind of mix up light and heavy attacks, and the simplest way to explain this is that you can replace light attacks on your combo routes with heavy attacks. So for example, you can use XXXYY for combo C, but you can also use XYXYY for combo C. This will replace the second light attack with a heavy attack that combos into the third light attack, which then allows you to combo into the combo C finisher. And since you're using a heavy attack earlier, this will do more damage than the standard combo route. You can also do XXYXYY for a combo D finisher, and XYXXYY. As long as you don't press Y twice in a row, it'll combo back into a normal attack for these specific combo routes. And of course, Combo E is the avatar finisher that can only be done with the full sword shine. And if you are wondering, the best combos are typically Combo B for being fast and still doing decent damage, and the XYXYY variant of Combo C for being the strongest damage option in a vacuum, but being slower and harder to pull off sometimes to get the full benefit. This combo typically ends in a little windmill vertical spin attack. In theory, this is a pretty interesting system, and when executed correctly, it can net a lot of nice damage, but practically it can sometimes not feel the best to use. For one, anytime you dismiss the avatar, your sword shine gauge resets to the minimum no matter what, and that means that if an enemy moves or there's downtime, you'll lose all the levels you gained if you decide to dismiss your avatar. And secondly, it's really hard to build the avatar gauge efficiently with just combo finishers since you get a relatively small amount per finisher. Sure, you can summon your avatar whenever you have gauge, but you ideally don't want to do this unless the meter is full or near full since you won't be able to effectively build sword shine levels with low levels of avatar gauge, which means less damage overall if you're just activating and deactivating only when you're guaranteed to land attacks. This can make Seofon a bit tricky to use as he's a character who really wants to stick to the enemy after summoning the avatar, so he can build sword shine and get the maximum amount of damage and benefit, and ideally you'll want to finish with an avatar finisher when your avatar gauge is low, and that requires full sword shine and a full combo finisher. He has a skill that can help get the most benefit out of sword shine by filling the avatar gauge even when the avatar is already out, but even then the management of this gauge can be a little tricky. The ideal Seofon gameplay loop is likely going to be using combo D as much as you can to build avatar gauge if you do not have the avatar out, and then using Combo B and XYXYY variant of Combo C when the avatar is active for the most damage and benefit during Sword Shine. What you should do should depend on what the boss is currently doing, since Combo B is the safest and faster option, and can allow for skill weaves easier, but Combo C does the most damage in a vacuum. And naturally, if you want to keep Sword Shine up as much as you can to get the most damage, you can refill the avatar gauge with your skill to keep wailing on the boss with more damage. So with all that being said, let's get into setup now. So similar to Tuyen, Seofon's best weapon is going to be his Ascension weapon since he does not have access to a Terminus weapon, but that is just fine because it comes with some pretty useful sub-traits, just like supplementary damage. That is going to ensure that you do the extra 20% damage every time it triggers, and along with a couple supplementary damage sigils that'll trigger 100% of the time for a free damage boost. It also comes with the last 5 levels of damage caps you need to ensure that you are doing the most damage possible, and the Sigil Booster bonus effect, which just increases all of the levels of your sigils by 1 to get the most benefit out of that. For my 4 required damage cap sigils, I'm running 2 Gammas to get the universal boost on everything, which is really nice to have another 30% damage cap from using those. If you want a more offensive-oriented setup, you could run 2 Alphas here instead of the 2 damage caps that I have, or an Alpha and a Beta. But I like the defensive sub-traits that having these offer. The Potion Horde is really nice to have to stay extra safe. And Aegis increases the maximum health value that you have up to about 44,000, so you're just able to play safer since you're going to be in the enemy's face a lot. So I do like these sub-traits just for a more standard, safe way to play. But if you want the maximum amount of damage, the optimal thing is going to be 2 Alphas or an Alpha and a Beta, most likely. I'm also running 1 critical hit rate. Now, Seofon has a higher base critical hit rate than other characters at 60%, so it's much easier to hit the critical hit rate cap with good over masteries and just 1 critical hit rate, as long as you get decent over masteries, or maybe if you're running a crit rate imbue as well. So that's something to keep in mind. I'm also running Tyranny. This, along with the stamina sub-trait on the critical hit rate, is all you need to hit damage caps on most things. Most of your skills and your standard light attacks will hit damage cap just with these 2. However, your Y attacks or your heavy attacks will be a little bit harder to cap, especially the earlier combo finishers. So that is the point of the combo booster effect here, just kind of ensure that I'm hitting extra damage on those heavy attacks, since those do a decent amount of damage also. This also has the Gut sub-trait on it to live with 1 HP no matter what, just a really nice effect to have to just kind of ensure survivability even more, so you can continue attacking even more. So that's something really nice to have also. I'm also running 2 supplementary damages to just ensure that I'm hitting that 20% extra damage no matter what. One of these has a quick cooldown on it, really nice effect to have just to kind of reduce your skill cooldowns by 10%. Really efficient just to have if you can only fit 1 of them on your build. If you can fit 3 somehow, then you can get 20% cooldown reduction, which is also pretty nice. And then I also have 1 Cascade on my Tyranny. That is also some nice cooldown reduction just for having only 1 of those effects. And then I have War Elemental. This is just a nice universal 20% damage boost as well. Always applies, always make sure attacks count as a superior element, pretty much a required sigil on basically every character because of how useful it is. And then I'm running the 7-star Boundary effect. This is basically the catastrophe bonus effect that every other character has on their Terminus weapon. This is just a sigil effect instead, they kind of replacing the supplementary damage sigil. This ensures your max HP cannot pass 45,000, but gives you a 50% extra attack and 100% damage cap. Really, really pretty much required sigil to have on him. And then I am running the Awakening Sigil, which has Spirit Edge's Rally and Spirit Edge's Fury. Swordshine level plus 12.5% whenever you activate a skill when the avatar is summoned. So this ensures that you are gaining Swordshine whenever you use a skill, meaning you can get to the maximum Swordshine level a lot easier. So it's really nice to just have this bonus effect on the kit. And then Spirit Edge's Fury. This will boost attack power, stun power, and damage cap when the avatar is summoned. So you get even more attack, you get even more stun power, and you get even more damage cap while you have the avatar out. So you get even more benefit from having the avatar. So you might be wondering, why am I not running the Warpath Sigil? Well, the problem with Seofon's Warpath Sigil is that you only get the benefit of it after you use a full avatar finisher. So there are a couple of problems with this. The first is that it can only be performed when you have a full Swordshine gauge. And of course, that means you have to build it up before you get any benefit out of it. The second is, after you use the avatar finisher, it depletes both of your gauges, meaning that you have no ability to use the avatar after you use your Swordshine finisher, which means you are losing out on a lot of damage from not having it active, which means the entire point of the enhanced damage that you get from using the avatar finisher is not really taking effect. This means that outside of Link Time, where you get the full gauge no matter what, you're really not seeing much benefit out of this ability. So even though it offers some really nice effects and you get a nice enhanced damage bonus for 30 to 45 seconds, I believe, it's really just not that useful overall. If it was any combo finisher while the avatar was active, it would be more useful, but the fact that it's specifically the strong avatar finisher you can only perform with the max Swordshine gauge and it immediately gets rid of your avatar just makes it not really a useful Warpath Sigil, unfortunately. Maybe if they update it in the future to work on any kind of combo finisher, it'll be a lot more useful. But for now, I do not recommend running it with the current setup, and most Seofon mains do not recommend running it either. Let's talk about Seofon's skills now. The first skill is Burrito. This is a really nice skill because it acts as a very nice gap closer, which is really his only way to gap close on enemies, which is something you're going to want to be doing when you're trying to stick to the enemy and keep your avatar gauge up. And it does a pretty decent amount of damage and has a pretty low cooldown, so this is probably a skill you're going to want to be running most of the time, no matter what. Infinito Crier. This is a really nice ability also because it's just a lot of attacks at once where you summon a lot of swords. You can dodge roll out of it and keep attacking the enemy as well. The thing is, you want to make sure you are locked onto the enemy when you use this because it can very easily whiff and just kind of hit your swords into the ground. So make sure you are locked onto the enemy when you use this or right next to the enemy. Otherwise, you're probably going to whiff a bunch of your attacks. But otherwise, it has a fairly short cooldown also and does a decent amount of damage. So it's a really nice skill because of that. Tempesta is basically a required skill. This is one of the ways to immediately gain the full avatar gauge. And since it's pretty hard to gain gauge, this is going to be required. It also offers a critical hit rate buff while it's active. Not really that useful if you are running maximum critical hit rate anyway, since the buff isn't always active. And an attack buff, but those are kind of just secondary to the fact that it maxes out the avatar gauge, which is the main benefit of it. Maxing out the avatar gauge means that if you are already in avatar mode, you can use this to just kind of max out the gauge again to get more benefit out of Sword Shine if you're at max level, to just kind of keep using those combo finishers and get the most benefit out of that, which is really nice. And of course, just the fact that you're able to get full avatar gauge at the beginning of the fight means you can instantly start doing a lot of damage. The cooldown isn't terribly long either, so you should be able to use this multiple times in mini fights and get some benefit out of it. And then we have Despetazar. I hope I pronounced that right. I have no clue if I did or not. This is just a nice series of swift slashes. It does a lot of damage. It's a pretty high damage skill. That's probably the main reason to run it. The cooldown isn't terribly long either, so it's just a good skill because of that. His other four skills I would not say are as useful. This is why this is kind of just the main set here. Rotor is just kind of a dodge backward and a forward leaping slash that does a high amount of stun damage. Useful if you really need the stun damage, otherwise probably not better to run over the other skills that you currently have that do damage, but the stun damage can be nice at the very least, and it'll always do more hits if the sword level is high enough as well. Ispirazione, this is a hostility and defense buff. If you really want to kind of play as a tank, I guess you can use this. It might ensure that you're able to hit the enemy more, and it also grants debuff immunity also if you have Sword Shine level high enough. So these are some okay effects. The defense buff can be pretty nice, and debuff immunity can always be really nice depending on the fight that you are in. But overall, I don't really recommend running this if you're trying to do as much damage as possible, so it really just kind of depends on the situation. And then we have Prisión de Armas. This is a slow effect that if you really want a status effect to slow the enemy, this is something you can definitely run. But it won't be doing a lot of damage, so that is something to keep in mind. Still, slow is a pretty nice status effect, so it's not the worst skill in the world. Definitely something you could trade out one of the skills if you really want the slow. And then finally, there is 7 stars Brilliance. This is unfortunately not very useful because it takes way too long to charge up and way too long to actually use. The way it works is that it is on cooldown when the battle starts and then takes about 5 minutes before you can actually use it. And if you are able to use it, it's really good because it can max out the entire party's SBA gauge, so there are some situations that would be extremely useful, but the problem is it's just going to be off cooldown in most fights because fights just don't last long enough. So that is going to be the main problem with this skill. If you are somehow in a fight where you think it'll last long enough, it is definitely worth bringing because just instant SBA after you've already used an SBA can allow you to really stun lock bosses for a really long time, but the fact that it's automatically on cooldown no matter what just really kind of hinders the viability of this skill, unfortunately. So let's talk about Overmasteries really quickly. Last kind of thing for setup here. I do not have amazing Overmasteries on him by any means, but I did get critical hit rate up to ensure 100% critical hit rate really easy with his default critical hit rate, and normal attack damage cap up 12%. If you're able to get skill cap up and normal attack up at the same time, that's really nice to have. And critical hit rate can be really nice to kind of bridge the gap to make 100% easier with only one critical hit rate sigil or without even a critical hit imbue if you really want to. The attack up can be nice, although I'm usually hitting caps on everything except some of my Y attacks with the current setup that I have, so it's not really a huge deal, and I have Skybound Art damage up as well right now. Sun Power would probably be more useful, so that's something to keep in mind also. But ideally, normal attack cap up, skilled cap up, and crit up, just kind of the same as every other character in the game. That's going to cover it for setup, so let's take a look at some gameplay practical application now. So I think this fight is ironically kind of hard for Seofon because it's hard to get link attacks off, which means it's harder to build the avatar gauge since that's one of the best ways that you can actually build it. And he's also jumping around a lot, meaning it's harder to land the combo finishers when you start combo attacks, meaning that it can be very difficult to build up the Sword Shine gauge as well and get the all the benefit out of that you can. And I think this fight that I'm going to show off here kind of illustrates some of the problems you might run into with the character. Although I'm going to try to show off just kind of how to use the character the best I can. I immediately activate my avatar gauge skill to get that maxed out, and then summon the avatar, and then kind of go into all of my skills immediately, and then just try to use my combo finishers to build up the Sword Shine gauge. I wasn't able to use the finisher there because he goes into Bloodlust before I'm able to activate that near the end of the avatar gauge, so I had to just kind of forego that. The avatar finisher isn't absolutely necessary. It's not like you're going to lose out on a massive amount of damage because you're unable to use it, but it still sucks if you can't get that off, since it is still a decent chunk that you can get from using that avatar finisher when your avatar gauge is almost depleted. So during this section, can't really do much right now. This downtime does help the skill come off cooldown. That allows me to get my avatar gauge back quicker, though, at the very least. And I accidentally stand too close to them there. And I thought I was out of range here, but I'm bad and ended up standing into the consistent lingering hitbox there. So now while he's jumping around, I'm just kind of waiting on my ability that gives me full avatar gauge to come off cooldown, summon the avatar after that, and then I'm just going to go into using all of my skills again here to kind of build up the avatar gauge as much as I can. I guard that attack after using my skills, and then I'm going to try to use combo finishers here, but you're going to see how difficult that can be right now. He's jumping around a lot, meaning that I'm able to lay my combo finishers like I would like to here. And since I'm whiffing a lot of the combo finishers attack, I'm not building the Sword Shine gauge like I would like to. So I'm doing less damage and also not going to be able to use the combo finisher again, which is really unfortunate. But in the wake of trying to stay in his face, I end up getting too close and dying because I didn't have the Guts activation anymore. I wouldn't have been able to use the avatar finisher anyway, and the avatar gauge was depleted, so I didn't end up losing that much from that, unfortunately. But it's still unfortunate. I'm not getting the most benefit out of a lot of my abilities here, but I'm still trying to make the most use out of the avatar gauge that I can. And later in the fight, I'm able to take more advantage of that at the very least. So you can see now we got a Link attack that actually fills the avatar gauge somewhat. And what I'm going to do here is once my skill that gives me more avatar gauge comes off cooldown, I'm going to take advantage of that. So I activate the avatar gauge a little bit early here, because I know I'm going to get that skill off cooldown. And since we're in kind of a Link attack lock here, I'm just going to be able to kind of get more benefit out of the avatar gauge and the Sword Shine gauge this time around. So I've already got nearly full Sword Shine here. I go ahead and activate my SBA during some downtime here. And now I can just kind of keep attacking him and actually get a lot of benefit out of the Sword Shine gauge. I'm going to be using my strongest damage combos when I can here. And I use an XY combo there to get full Sword Shine gauge, and I've got a lot of avatar gauge left, so I'm able to get a lot of benefit out of this specific use of the gauge, which is really nice. So I was going to try to finish this with an avatar finisher, but I think I ended up messing up slightly and deactivating the avatar gauge when I didn't mean to, because I thought I used a different finisher than I actually did, and you can see it right there. I was just mashing Y trying to get the avatar finisher out, but that wasn't the right finisher. And, of course, that means that I accidentally dismissed the avatar and lost everything at the very end there, so I wasn't able to use an avatar finisher. It doesn't end up mattering. The fight's basically over at this point because of the consistent paralysis, because of the stuff that Tweeyan can do, so that's really nice at the very least. All in all, for that fight specifically, it can be a little bit more difficult to use the character than it might be normally, since you're not getting many Link attacks to fill the avatar gauge a lot easier, especially when you already have the avatar out. And the boss is moving around a lot, so landing those combo finishers while the avatar is out to build the Sword Shine gauge is going to be a bit more difficult. Those are kind of some persistent struggles you might run into playing Seofon in a lot of situations, so that is something to keep in mind if you plan on playing the character. Just try to stay in the enemy's face as much as you can to take advantage of those as much as you can. I don't want this video dragging out too long though, so I think that is going to cover it for this video. I do hope you have learned something from watching, and if you did, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and please support me any other way you can, and please look forward to my future Relink videos. I do have a tier list plan that I'm probably going to do. I might wait for after the next patch, we will see, since it might have some more balance changes, but I'll try to get that out soon if I decide to do it for this patch. With all that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. As always, I do appreciate all the support, and have a wonderful and blessed day, and hopefully I will see you back here soon.